Welcome to Now Showing with Mike and Wayne, a new podcast where we're going to talk about movies and TV and anything else that we're related to such. And let's begin. So I'm Mike Kirkpatrick, and I'm here with Wayne Yerke.
Hey, hey!
So we've been friends for, 5-6 years now, at least.
Yep.
We both love movies, and we decided it was time to have our own podcast to talk about things that we love, which movies and TV shows, actors, Hollywood.
Absolutely. And what better way to just occupy our time if that's all this is going to be than do this with something that we both obviously love and are passionate about, because half the time at work, this is what we did anyway.
Yes, so. Exactly. When we were fortunate enough to be working before this whole crisis went down. All right, so we're going to start off with 5 movies to get to know us by, for people that listen to us that don't know who we are. I gather that a lot of people will know who we are. My number one movie, it's my favorite movie of all time, and it's a movie, if anyone asks me, what's your favorite movie, is Ghostbusters. Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, and Harold Ramis. Drew on a blank there for a minute.
Rest in
peace, Harold Ramis. Yes. He's surely missed by all of his Ghostbusters fans. It's a movie I remember growing up watching numerous times. I've probably seen it 50 plus times. Could quote it, back and forth with you, with anybody who we used to work with, all my other friends I grew up with. It just always hit a note for me. I always joke with my parents and is that, that's what I wanted to be when I grew up, was a Ghostbuster, which is funny because it is a job that you could do now, even though, whether you believe in that stuff or not, people do it for a living. But yeah, so I mean, that one movie probably sticks out the most to getting me into movies in the first place. So
absolutely. And you want to talk about just iconic, as 80s kids, when you think about, just blockbusters and what pretty much anybody's going to know about. You bring up Ghostbusters, you know what we're talking about.
Exactly. And it brings, I think anytime you bring it up, everyone's got their favorite scene, their favorite memory of watching it, and it's just an easy go-to movie, but it's always for me as a movie buff, it was always hard to settle on a number one movie, but that is my now staple answer when people ask me, your favorite movie, Ghostbusters, hands down, because I've seen it tons of times and just love all the characters in it and the ghosts and yeah. So, all right, Wayne, what is your first movie you want to talk about?
Well, probably the topic that triggers a lot of folks, especially in their fan base. I got to go with Star Wars, specifically Empire Strikes Back. My opinion, the best of the 9, 10, 11, depending on what you consider Star Wars and what you don't.
Yes.
Empire Strikes Back, 1980. My personal favorite, just because the bad guys win in this one.
Yeah, that's a big thing for me, and that's why I like it so much too. Is the kind of the downness of it, and I know a lot of people like to still go with Star Wars as their number one, just because it is hopeful. Especially in these times we have now, something hopeful is good. But Empire Strikes Back just always, it hit such a down note, but it just made you feel I guess would be the right way to say it. It made, it made you feel a lot of emotions and anger and sadness and just in awe of what happened and what you just saw. And yeah, I'm not surprised by you because I know that's your favorite series. So that is a great movie.
I was worried that there was going to be a cop-out, but I'm like, it's me. It's my choice. Mm-hmm. So, hey, it is what it is. I am a big force-wielding nerd, and I'm proud of it. Cause...
Well, and you'll see what my other choices that have basically go, and no surprise to most people. Are you anything else you want to say about that one? Or
Nope. I'm sure at some point we will cover all the Star Wars in multiple episodes, so I'm not going to go in any further than saying what I've said about Empire Strikes Back being my personal favorite.
And to me, honestly, it is one of the best sci-fi movies. And I know another movie that we've talked about that I would compare it to, and a lot of people, this isn't my next pick or anything, but Wrath of Khan, Star Trek Wrath of Khan. Those two are the top 2 tier of sci-fi movies of all time. But yeah, so for my second pick, I'm going to go with, and this is going to be no surprise that anybody knows me, Halloween. The original.
I'm honestly surprised that wasn't number 1, but awesome.
Halloween has easily become one of my top 5 movies of all time. It's definitely my top horror film of all time. Obviously, I wasn't alive when it came out, so I had to kind of grow to it. I was late coming to the party. Fucking nah. But so I mean, it's Michael Myers. He's my favorite slasher killer. You know, of the big Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th. Michael Myers has always been my number one. And Halloween has been one of my favorite movies ever since I saw it, probably like 20, 25 years ago. And I watch it every year now, as I do, you know, I do the 31 Days of Halloween where I watch a horror movie every day. That's always one of them. And it is my favorite series too. And not just that movie overall, but the series itself I like more than most of the other series. But that particular movie, like it just, the opening shot, you're Michael and he's going around and he's, you know, killing his sister, and it's just something that you didn't see back then. And then the reveal that it's a child in the beginning. I mean, there's just so much about that movie that I love. And I think
from the opening title card, that iconic score.
The score, yeah. I mean,
and this the glowing eerie pumpkin there. It's like, oh, yeah, it's just you're ready.
Yes.
And I am not a horror guy whatsoever. I am a coward, 100%. But Halloween is one that I will watch anytime it comes on.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's one of my top movies of all time. I mean, definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. But Wayne, what's your second one you want to talk about?
Second one, I'm staying in the 80s. I'm going with 1985's Back to the Future. Another iconic, just something that we quote incessantly. Mm-hmm. What can you say about this movie that hasn't already been said? That I've never met a person that didn't like it. I mean, it's very rare that you come across someone who's like, oh, I didn't care for it. It's at the least it's entertaining. Whether you love it as much as the diehard fans or not, it's at least an entertaining movie. The first one especially. Yes, and even as the sequels came out, they got less and less. You know, some would say good. I love the third one as well. I love all 3 of them.
I do too. I do love all 3 of them. I'm not as big of a fan as you are, I don't think, but as a fan of the series, I do like all 3 of them pretty good.
I pretty much incorporate some quote into my life every day, whether it be, there's that word again, heavy. Is there something wrong with the Earth's gravitational pull in the future? Just anything like that. I mean, Dr. Emmett L. Brown is amazing. I just love it. I don't have any reason why. It's just, there are a million reasons why. I can't even begin to quote them or explain why.
Yeah.
But if I need to tell you why, you probably need to revisit the movie.
Yeah, exactly. It is a great film. All right, so my number 3 I want to talk about, we're going to go, I went 80s and I went 70s, and I'm going to go into the 90s, and I'm going to go with Scream. The very first Scream.
Okay.
Scream, to me, opened up this weird world where it was like, horror movies that aren't just scary, but they're entertaining as well. And like it's hilarious, but it's also like gut-wrenching at times, and it's suspenseful, and all the characters are like near perfect. Like it's one of those movies that I think because it has the horror comedy elements, a lot of times it's not talked about as being like a scary movie, but it is really like, it is a horror film. It just is it started the whole meta thing basically before Wes Craven's second attempt as New Nightmare was his first attempt at meta, and that's why a lot of people like that one too. But Scream was like his first attempt, his second attempt, but his most successful attempt. And it just works. I mean, it works. So I love the whole series overall, but like the first movie, I was probably too young to see it in theaters, but I saw it in theaters with a buddy of mine. We were like 13.
Yep.
And it was just so enjoyable, so gory and bloody, and just like whatever slasher movie should be. But instead of like, in Friday the 13th movies, like there's parts I laugh at, but they weren't intentionally funny. Like these were intentionally funny moments that you just busted up laughing at. And it's always stuck to me as one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite horror movies of all time.
I got to admit, I was afraid to see that movie. I was probably 14. I think it came out in 96. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, 1996.
Doing the math properly.
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid to see it. I didn't actually see it until it came out on VHS. and I watched it by myself on a rainy Friday night because I thought that was a great idea, and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I still got scared of the freaking mask anytime I saw it for at least 2 weeks afterwards, but definitely one of the craziest things about that is just Drew Barrymore. She was a pretty big star during that time, and she's really only in the opening sequence.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
and
that was huge back then. And I believe that she took that role because, like, they had offered her, I'd have to go back and check to be sure, but they offered her, like, the Sidney Prescott role, but she's like, no, I want this role. I want to be that role. And that's what started. If you watch the series, every movie has famous people in the beginning that you, maybe not super famous, like the second one, it was, at the time, they weren't super famous, Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett, but they were recognizable actors in the opening sequence who get killed off right away. And it's the same with Drew Barrymore in the first movie. And I think that's what made it so iconic. And it's let other movies do that now, too. Like, some of them in a jokey way, some of them not in a jokey way. They have big characters come in, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I know that guy, and he's dead. And you're like, oh, okay, I guess they're not here very long, so.
When you're the main topic of a spoof movie, a spoof comedy, you know you've done something really, really well.
Yeah, for sure. That's true, yeah. It's a franchise that spawned their own, which originally, the title for Scream was originally Scary Movie. So it's funny that for the Weinsteins who owned, I know we don't talk about the Weinsteins anymore, but at the time they were big, obviously, in the film industry, and they had the rights to that title, I think, which is why Scary Movie, which came out from them as well, was named Scary Movie. So to kind of be a perfect parody of that. But yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, it's just always stuck out to me as one of the best representations of how you could do horror and comedy together and still have it actually be scary.
Yeah.
All right, what's your third one, Wayne?
I'm going to go mainstream again. I'm jumping into the 92, and I'm going with Jurassic Park, the original.
All right.
Just my love of just dinosaurs is, when you hear this movie coming out, and obviously, we hear these movies come out, a year beforehand or even like a year and a half, we're sitting in the theater waiting for the movie to start, and waiting to see the commercials, the trailers even, and all of a sudden, the music starts playing, and if I remember correctly, maybe I'm just making it up, you hear the roar, and then the star's like, holy cow, those look like real dinosaurs. How did they do that? As a 91, 92?
Hold on, let me verify that. I was either 93 or 94, I think.
Okay.
Let me just, but yeah, it's one of those movies, like, I've always said, like, it's not, those aren't my favorite series, but if I'm going to pick one to talk about, it's definitely 1993. It's definitely Jurassic Park, because the movie, not only did it break a lot of like boundaries, like just because of like blockbuster type movies, but just visual effects wise, like you were talking about the dinosaurs looking like dinosaurs. Like, I mean, that was a big deal. Like, that was a big deal back in 1993 that they looked like that and that we were able to make movies like that. Now it's like nothing, but it's like back then it was huge. Especially coming off of like something like Terminator 2, where it had such a great visual style to it, CGI wise.
Funny you bring up that movie.
maybe that's a tease right there, everybody. That's a tease coming up soon.
Yes, indeed.
But
it's just. I chose movies that made an impact on me. They're not necessarily my favorites.
Exactly.
Per se,
Same here.
But I went with stuff that made a lasting impression, that made me want to get into this industry some way, shape, or form. And that was one of them. I mean, from Wayne Knight's character to Samuel L. Jackson's character, hold on to your butts.
Yes. Oh, God.
Professor Arnold.
He's great. So my favorite fan theory, is that he's going to come back in one of these future movies, which would be great, because you never actually see him die. You just see his arm, Samuel L. Jackson's character.
Hey, you got to sacrifice a limb to survive,
All right, anything else you want to say about it, or
Again, I'm sure this is one we're going to cover in the future at some point. So no, we're good. Just giving people an idea about who we are personality-wise and what shaped us into the demented forms that we are now.
Very true. And this next movie is going to cover that demented form that I am. So going back to 1989, I'm going to touch on the movie Heathers, starring Christian Slater and Winona Ryder, directed by Michael Lehman and written by Daniel Waters. Heathers is a movie I saw probably, it came out in 89. I probably saw it like 92, 93 at a friend's house, and I was just in love with it. It's so dark and so disturbing at times, but so funny. Like, and that's, you know, that's what kind of turned me on to dark comedies. Like, that's why my sense of humor is probably a lot more wicked than most people, because that type of movie, like, shouldn't be funny to normal people, but it's hilarious to me, and it's about murder and two students who basically go on a killing spree. So, but it's a comedy, so it really kind of set me up for other dark comedies that I know other people didn't like, and because I feel like because of Heathers, like I like those other movies too, because to have that dark sense of humor, it really, you know, makes you different, I guess, than other people, and it makes you see things a little differently. And Christian Slater is basically doing a Jack Nicholson impression the entire time, but it's perfect. It's great, and it's got great lines, great quotes. I'm not going to repeat most of them here because some of them are pretty bad, but it's got some really great performances and great one-liners. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but
not in a very long time. I was actually going to say, it's like, you know, aside from knowing that Christian Slater's in it, I don't really recall a lot of it. That's definitely something I'm going to need to revisit.
Yes, Shannon Doherty is also in it. She plays one of the Heathers. But yeah, it's really Winona Ryder's movie, and it was her kind of what shot her into stardom. Really, I mean, she.
Sir, you're forgetting about a little film called Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice, I believe, is that the same year? Or was that the year before? Hold on, let me check real quick. You might be right. It was either the same year or it was the year before. Because, yeah, that was right around the same time. Also, one of my favorites, too, Edward Scissorhands. I mean, she had a lot of movies that she did that kind of made her famous. Beetlejuice was 1988. Okay, so I said Beetlejuice. Well, and let's be honest, too. I'll be honest.
It wasn't really shot to stardom by that.
No, Heathers shot her into stardom in my heart. Because, I'll be honest, too, no one really saw Heathers. So, it wasn't like a movie star role, really. Beetlejuice probably is the one that got her noticed by everybody. To me, it was Heathers, though, because Heathers, like I said, it was just always held a place in my heart. One of my favorite comedies, and just really, really creative and dark and edgy, and Christian Slater is one of my favorites.
Yep. Nice.
All right, what's your next one, Wayne?
My next one, I am delving into the world of organized crime. And there are a lot of fantastic movies that deal with this. You could go with The Godfather, 1974?
1972. 1972. Yeah. Godfather Part 2 is 1974, yeah.
See, I'm getting them confused. Now, shame on me. I mean, then of course you got 1991's Goodfellas, but my choice is actually going to be A Bronx Tale.
Ooh, I thought it was going to be Goodfellas. Okay.
Goodfellas drops off for me. Like, I'm not saying there's anything flawed with it. For me, it's just something that when Henry Hill and that whole thing with Ray Liotta, when they get into the drugs,
I could see that. It's still one of my favorite mob movies, but I could totally understand it. It's a little different movie. It's a different movie by that time.
Chaz Palminteri stars as Sonny.
Yep.
This is a one-man play that he wrote and starred in.
It's like about people from his neighborhood, right? Isn't that what the basis of it was?
I think it is basically his story. And again, without getting too much into this, because I would love to do a organized crime, show in the future.
We'll cover it, yeah.
Lilo Brancato, the young Colodro, I believe is how you pronounce it. I might have to check with Vinny Barbera on pronunciation, just because I ain't so good with words sometimes, But fantastic. Obviously, Robert De Niro. What can you say if you're talking about an organized crime movie and you don't mention him or Joe Pesci? Then I don't know if this movie was worth seeing. But the soundtrack is what really makes this one great for me. While The Godfather's got some epic tracks, and obviously Goodfellas does as well. There's just something about A Bronx Tale and the underlying story about love, and you get three great ones, and that whole. Again, we're going to go into this in more detail, but A Bronx Tale is just fantastic, and it doesn't end the way you assume it's going to. At least it didn't for me, and that's why that's the one I chose out of all the options out there.
No, man, it's a classic film. I love that movie. I haven't seen it in some time, so I'll have to give it a rewatch. Yep. But yeah,
actually, the first movie I watched when I moved down to Florida in 2017 was A Bronx Tale.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I think mine was Cursed Chucky, I think. Or called, yeah, Cursed Chucky. Because I bought it on Blu-ray and I hadn't seen it.
There it is.
But, no, that's good, man. It's a good choice. De Niro, obviously, in that as well, and he is fantastic. Yeah, that's one of those movies I remember. I probably watched it a dozen times as a kid just because it was on TV all the time back in, 93, I think, when it came out. So probably like 94, 95, I watched it a bunch. But so my last movie that I'll talk about personally here, I've been racking my brain. There's the mob movies. There's all these movies. If I'm going to choose a movie from one of my, well, I should say two of my favorite directors. Maybe people will know where I'm going with. I'm going to choose a movie from the Coen brothers. This is not my favorite movie that they've done, but it's a movie that I probably watched more than any of their other films, and it's The Big Lebowski. And I know people, it's kind of grown bigger than... It's been one of those fan bases that probably people are annoyed by us by now because we're such huge fans, but it's honestly a movie from the moment I saw it, I fell in love with it, and I fell in love with their style and their comedy, what they get their actors to do sometimes and stuff, and just what they get out of them. My favorite Coen Brothers movie is probably Miller's Crossing, which is a mob movie, but yeah, this is probably the one that really kind of turned me into just going out there and finding weird movies, because The Big Lebowski, for the most part, is a weird movie. A lot of people always compare it to Seinfeld. There's really not much of a plot. Nothing that happens really needs to happen. It just happens, and it's great. And obviously, Jeff Bridges, perfect. I mean, I've heard him talk about any of his roles, and he sounds like the dude in real life. I mean, that's just who he is, I think. And he was great, and John Goodman was fantastic, and Steve Buscemi, John Turturro as Jesus, which they just had that sequel, which looks weird, but I don't know if I'll ever watch that. We'll see. And Peter Stormare is one of the Germans, along with Flea, which was an interesting casting choice. And Charles Durning.
That supporting cast is just fantastic. When you stop and think about who's in that.
Yeah, Tara Reid. It's just you keep going on and on. Julianne Moore, obviously. But yeah, it's such a great movie. It's so funny. I know some people don't care for it, but to me, it's always one of those movies. I haven't actually watched it in a while. I used to watch it. It used to be one of my go-tos all the time back in the day growing up. But through the early 2000s.
Where's the money, Lebowski?
You want a toe? I can get you a toe. You want a toe by 3 o'clock? I can get you a toe. With green nail polish. Yeah, Walter Sobchak, one of the greatest characters written to film. But yeah, I mean, to me, like I said, it's just one of those movies that's always stuck out to me. And I think people that, again, these are movies that people should know us by. Anyone that knows me knows I love that movie, and I've been such a huge fan for a long time. The Coen brothers specifically are two of my favorite directors. But yeah, so that would be my last one. There's so many more I would like to touch on, but we're gonna keep. We don't want to keep. We could go for hours if we talk about every movie we like.
I've got some honorable mentions here that I'm going to run through. Real quick.
I'll do some
I
as well.
I really wanted to choose a sports movie.
Okay.
But I couldn't narrow it down to one. I obviously 1999's Varsity Blues.
Oh yeah.
League of Their Own, 93. Field of Dreams, or any baseball movie with Kevin Costner's fantastic in it. But The Longest Yard, either one is good, totally different styles, whatnot. But I didn't go to the sports realm. I didn't go that direction. And as you know, I hinted at it already. I ended up settling on Terminator 2 Judgment Day. 1991, James Cameron. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton are back. And the script has been flipped. I mean, just genius, let's take the bad guy and make him the good guy. And this remorseless killing machine figures out how to be emotional and love.
Yep. Well, it creates this iconic villain though too with T-1000. I mean,
Robert Patrick.
Yeah, oh god.
I don't think anything else that Robert Patrick has done. I think he's probably most. Well, I shouldn't say that, but when I think Robert Patrick, I immediately think of T-1000.
Well, I think most people do too, and I think it's even because I remember. Not that it's a great movie, but in the movie The Marine, they even he's the villain in that one, and they make a mention what does this guy think he's the Terminator? And they look, and it pauses, and they look at him for a second. So I think it's followed him throughout his career. So
Wayne's World, he spoofs as the T-1000.
Yep. I forgot about that.
But I mean, you want to talk about just special effects that affected had it played a role or influence on you. When the T-1000 is chasing him through the mental hospital, and he goes through the bars.
Yep.
And he comes up out of the floor and stabs the security guard, and then the chase, and obviously we talk about the end scene. This is definitely a movie a franchise we're gonna talk about in detail. So I want to hesitate from fanboying out on this one, but just. Another movie I was afraid to watch because I was a sheltered coward.
And the first one is like a horror film. So it's like the first one it's almost like a slasher, even though it's a sci-fi movie, but the way they play it, because of the budget, it's like a slasher film. So the second one, you're almost expecting something similar, and he just went, just like he did with Aliens, he took this kind of horror idea and then turned it into this big budget sci-fi action flick. That was also great, like even compared to the first ones. Like it was still Aliens and Terminator 2 definitely hold very high ratings among fans when it comes to comparing them to the first one. So
I think I didn't see Terminator 2 in the theater. I think I was because I was about 9 when that came out, and my parents were like, absolutely not, rightly so, I guess. But I think I saw it around 11 or 12, and I definitely saw 2 before I saw the original Terminator.
I think I did
because
too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
well, it was rated R for a different reason. It was a little more gory and a little more. There was some nudity and stuff in it. But the same with the second one. Like the second one I saw was the first. I've only seen since it didn't last very long. Remember Laserdiscs? Terminator 2 was like the first...
Gigantic,
like records, basically. It was the first movie I ever saw on Laserdisc, and that's how I saw it for the first time. It was our neighbor got a Laserdisc player, and it's like, hey, I got Terminator 2. And my mom probably would have said no, but my dad's like, yeah, fine, you can watch it with us. That's fine.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's a great movie. It's one of the top, like we were talking about Star Wars and Star Trek have 2 of the top sci-fi movies. That's another one, Terminator 2 and The Terminator. Some of the best sci-fi movies of all time. I've got some honorable mentions, I guess. One that another movie that kind of speaks to my weirdness. And I watched it. I rented it at the video store in the late '90s and watched it a million times. Was Rushmore with Bill Murray. It's a Wes Anderson movie. A lot of people don't like Wes Anderson. He's a strange dude, but he's my kind of dude because that movie. I don't know what it was about that movie. It spoke to me in so many ways. But that's another one. Rushmore. Like The Departed is another great movie I watch a million times. Pulp Fiction, anything Quentin Tarantino, you know me. I've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood 3 times already, and that just came out. So,
what can I use you for?
Yeah, it's the greatest line from The Departed.
Best Boston accent ever.
Hey, he tried. God. He tried. It's Sir Jack Nicholson, okay? Mm-hmm. I know we don't do that here, but if anybody was going to get knighted in America, it would be Jack Nicholson. Or he'd be one of the starters of it. So any other movies you want to talk about that we didn't mention?
Goodness, I think I mentioned everything that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, ask me again in 5 minutes, and I'll probably have a completely different honorable mention list.
All right, so you want to get to our first movie that we're going to review together. You want to get to that?
Yes, indeed. Let us get on with the show, The Lovebirds.
The Lovebirds. All right, the movie was supposed to come out in theaters sometime in April. Due to COVID-19, it got purchased by Netflix, and Paramount agreed to sell it to them, and they bought it. It's directed by Michael Showalter, who I am a huge fan of. He is behind the TV show The State. He directed The Big Sick. He's one of the main characters and writers of Wet Hot American Summer. So I was excited when I saw he directed. I'm a huge fan of Kumail Nanjiani. I haven't watched Issa Rae's show, but after watching this movie, I'm a fan of hers now because her show Insecure on HBO, I have not yet watched that, but I thought she was very good in this movie. I guess I'll give a little synopsis. It's 2 people in love. And it goes through the years. In the beginning, it shows how they kind of fall out of love, and they decide they're going to break up on their way to a party. And then a guy hijacks their car and kills somebody, and they freak out and think that they're going to be wanted for murder. So they start to go on the run and try to solve the case themselves. That's the synopsis, basically.
For me, this is a combination of other movies.
Agreed. Yes.
Date Night, Steve Carell and Tina Fey.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And obviously, at one point, you get an eyes wide shut thing going on.
Yes, you do.
Not going to go too much into hey, but there's a little something going on. It completely took me by surprise, and I was like, oh, hey, okay, that makes sense. You know, pushing the boundaries. Obviously, if you're familiar with Eyes Wide Shut,
there's an orgy scene in Eyes Wide Shut, yes. So that should help anybody kind of draw.
If you ever
attention.
wanted to see a little bit more of Tom Cruise or Nicole Kidman, you get your opportunity. And,
yes.
But I love the way that this movie just kind of, it blended different things. Like immediately off the bat, I got like Steve Carell and Tina Fey and Date Night. Like, okay, it's gonna be this type of thing. It's not. Kind of what? So
well, and that was PG-13. This was rated R, so obviously you get that steps up a little bit with the language and the violence. It was, it reminded me of something like Date Night, even though it was not. And you know what it reminded me too of? Money Talks with Chris Tucker and Charlie Sheen from the 90s. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but it's another buddy movie. Two people, in this case, these two people are in love, so it is more similar to like something like Date Night, but they are different people, and I think that's part of the story is like they don't know each other as well like as they thought they did. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of those type of movies going through my head when I was watching it, but I thought it was pretty funny. I think a lot of it's held together by Issa and Kumail. They were a really great pair to put in this movie. I believe they both produced it, so they must have known that ahead of time that they had great chemistry. Yes. It was really funny. The plot's pretty basic, but other than that, I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. My wife, who doesn't always like watching comedies, she was sitting down when I was watching it, and she laughed a lot too at both of them because they're both very funny people. I don't think she even really remembers. She's seen Kumail in a couple things before, but her memory's not great when it comes to actors. So, oddly enough, she worked at a video store as well as I did for many years. So she was like, I don't know if I've seen these two people. Are they comedians? I'm like, yeah, they're both comedic people, comedic actors, comedians. I thought they held the movie together very well. Without them, I don't know if it's as good as it is, but for being on Netflix during quarantine, it's a very enjoyable movie to go put on and watch if you already have Netflix. So I don't know. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I would probably, if we were rating it, I'd say 3 out of 5. Solid 3 out of 5.
Yeah, definitely. That's right in the ballpark that I'm in. I always am concerned about the chemistry between leads because just because you get two big name stars together doesn't mean that the chemistry is going to be believable or they're going to work on screen as a couple. Mm-hmm. And I am not familiar with either lead, really. I know I've seen Kumail in stuff.
Yes.
I can't tell you what
He's
it is.
He's most known for Silicon Valley. That's probably his biggest thing.
And I can't really recall or tell you what Issa Rae has been in. So
yeah, this is honestly, I think this is the first thing I've seen her, and I know she's got a couple movies out I've seen trailers for. But I haven't watched them yet, and I haven't watched her show on HBO yet. She was really funny. It made me want to go out and definitely see some more of her stuff. But yeah, no.
And I think that actually... Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think that actually helps, though, not knowing much about either actor or the character they portrayed, because you just kind of let the relationship on screen develop. And, like, I'm going to use Jennifer Aniston as an example here, and I don't want to say she's a typecast actress or actor, whatever the correct phrase is. Forgive me if I said it wrong.
No,
but you know what you're going to get from a Jennifer Aniston movie, in my opinion.
For the most part,
you know what you're going to get from a Mark Wahlberg movie.
Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston have done a couple movies together.
Yes, they have. Yep.
You know what that relationship, that back and forth is going to be.
Yeah.
But with these two actors, you don't, and that's why I think it was just easier for me to follow and accept. Mm-hmm. And it was a really good time. It was, an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes of entertainment.
It was, and that
kept me guessing.
And I don't like to always get caught on times because, the time of a movie shouldn't mean whether it's good or not, and it doesn't. If a movie is 3 hours long or an hour and 20 minutes, they both could be great, they could both be terrible. But when you're trying to watch as much content that's out there right now, and sometimes you're just looking for something quick to watch, it's good to know there's movies out there that are 86 minutes, which I don't know, you're saying an hour and 20, probably with credits, you're right. It was probably only about an hour and 20 minutes of actual movie, which makes it for a quick watch. And it, like I said, it's very entertaining. I recommend people watch it. I think they'll enjoy it. If you haven't seen it already, I know we watched that one because we were trying to get this thing going a little while ago, so we watched that one a month ago. But I definitely recommend it and think people should go check it out if they've been hesitant yet. You've got our approval here at
Absolutely.
Now showing with Mike and Wayne, which is our new our title that we're going with.
I dig it. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, so I mean, go ahead and check it out. All right, so next we're going to talk about stuff that we've watched recently, or TV shows we're currently watching. Mm-hmm. You go ahead, Wayne. You start. What have you watched recently or currently watching that you like or digging on?
I am wrapping up season 4 of The Sopranos, and The Sopranos is something that I didn't watch until I would say 2015 all the way through.
Okay.
I never had HBO. We were poor. We never, this, that, and the other thing. I never just got around to watching Sopranos. Obviously, James Gandolfini is amazing as Tony Soprano. Edie Falco, Carmela, and just entire cast. Just love it. As I've said before, I love the organized crime stuff and whatnot. So I'm watching that again. It's fantastic. Based on your recommendation, I am on the first episode of Umbrella Academy, which is intriguing right now.
Yes.
I have nothing negative to say. I can't wait to watch it again.
I think you'll enjoy it. It's one of those movies, one of those TV shows I started a while back, probably when it came out, so like a year ago. And I just was like, the second season's not out yet. I'll wait till it gets closer. And the second season's the end of July now. So and then I went through it in like 2 days. So now I'm like jonesing for more because I finished it so quickly. But yeah, that's a really great series. I think if people haven't seen it, they need to check it out on Netflix because everyone's fantastic in it. And it's just, you'll see what I mean too. It's seriously one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard on a TV show ever.
Right. So far from the first half of the first episode, I dig it. But I'm going to bring up something I didn't really enjoy, and that was the final season of 13 Reasons Why.
Okay. I haven't seen it yet, so.
I'm not going to say anything about endings or anything like that, but I think it felt forced to me. I mean, the actors did a phenomenal job, and it's creative storytelling. It's just, I don't know.
Didn't do it for you, and that's okay.
It didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed following Clay through his first
I've always liked Clay,
3 seasons. But once the Hannah Baker stuff got tied up, I feel like we kind of just rode the coattails of those first 2 seasons, and this is probably going to be unpopular, but hey, send your questions in. Let's debate.
Yeah, let's have a talk about it. I honestly, dude, I stopped watching after season 3, episode 1. This is the last time I watched it. I watched it. I just couldn't get in. Like, I wasn't into the first episode. I was checking my phone. Yeah. I was like, and I think you're right. After season 2, when they wrap up the Hannah Baker story, like, I wasn't as interested anymore. I was like, I was interested to see where they were going to go, and then I guess where they went in the first episode of season 3, I was not that interested in because I never went back. So I thought about going back to it, but see, now you're going to make me hesitate going back to watching it because you didn't like season 4. So.
And you know what? I really do hope that some people disagree with me because I would love to hear what they have to say and, have a debate or, if we get to a point where we get, guests and we bring, other people on, I would love to have a spirited discussion, a respectful but spirited discussion about why they're incorrect in their assumptions and opinions.
Why your opinion is superior to their opinion? There's one more thing that I saw on Netflix. It's called Ragnarok. I've heard about it. I was told to watch it. I haven't started it yet, though.
It's English dubbed, and I think it's, I didn't do a lot of research on it.
I'll look it up right now while you're talking about it. Go ahead and talk about it, though.
Obviously, it has to do with Norse gods and mythology. Ragnarok is what happens when Asgard gets destroyed, and Thor and Odin and all that good stuff. I started watching the first episode at like 1 o'clock in the morning last week, just because couldn't sleep. And I ended up falling asleep, but it's an interesting premise, and it's something that I really want to explore. And I invite you and anybody listening to us to, watch the first episode, and if you're okay with English dub over.
Well, can you watch it in its original voice or no? Because usually Netflix is pretty good about that.
You probably can.
Okay.
In fact, it may be in.
It's Norwegian is the language, and Norway and Denmark is the country of origin, according to IMDb. So
nice. Yeah, I didn't intend to talk about this, but it's something that I just figured, hey, I'm going to throw this out there.
I've heard good things. I just haven't, with the foreign TV shows, like me and Rebecca watch a lot of those. But we have to be like, it has to be like a Saturday or Sunday, and we start it like in the morning time or at least early afternoon, because by nighttime it's like neither one of us want to watch something with subtitles. I don't prefer watching things dubbed. Some people can. It's not usually how I prefer to watch them. So I would prefer to be awake when I'm watching it. Like I started something the other night, which is supposed to be really good, called Border Town, and that's another one. It's I think Norwegian. It's out that way. And same thing. It was late at night. I'm like, I was watching something else. I'm going to go back. She fell asleep, I think. So I was like, I'll go back to what I was watching.
I hear you. Last thing I want to just touch on is something I'm really looking forward to is Lucifer Season 5, again on Netflix. Yes. And it sounded like...
did you hear the big news?
He signed on for Season 6.
Yes, which will be the final, as they said.
And it's actually one of Miranda's new favorites. We don't see eye to eye on a lot of stuff, but I got her watching Lucifer. We made it through the first 4 seasons in like 3 days, something like that. I think It was over Memorial Day weekend last year. And yeah, she's really into it. I'm really excited, and we heard there's going to be a 6th season. Where she and I both agree that we're worried that they're going to kind of run it into the ground and take it too far, but the first 4 seasons have been fantastic, and I liked what Netflix did with Season 4.
Yes.
And honestly, the villains have always been good. Just even like guest stars, Michael Imperioli, obviously.
Who is coming back, by the way, which I don't know if you saw that in the trailer. Obviously, if you've seen Lucifer, it's questionable how he's coming back, but...
Obviously, I am a big Smallville fan, so Tom Welling in Season 3.
Yes,
and actually, I think that was some of Tom Welling's best acting.
It was a great character arc for him, too. It was really good. I'm a huge fan of that show. I've been on it since the beginning. I know Netflix has really helped it, which is why Netflix picked it up and gave it 3 more extra seasons than to what we've gotten. What's good, too, is they're doing Season 5 Part 1 and Part 2. So we're getting like 16 episodes, and they're going to spread it out. So it's almost going to be like we're getting like 8 seasons out of this show, when really it's going to be listed as 6. But it's a really fun show. It's a procedural for the most part, which is similar to something like Supernatural. Each episode's about a specific murder or death or whatever. But there is that underlying story that carries it through, and he's just so good. I'm drawing a blank on his name at the moment. But Lucifer, I mean, if anyone hasn't seen it, Tom Ellis. I also recommend that show. That is a great show. I'm glad you brought it up.
Absolutely.
Yes. You anyone else you want to talk about, or?
No, I'm going to give you the floor. I've rambled on long enough.
All right, so I'm going to have to bring up my Instagram to see. Well, one movie I want to talk about that I just finished watching before this, and it's a rewatch, was Jean-Claude Van Damme's 93 action gem Hard Target.
Ooh.
This movie, I haven't seen it in years probably. I saw some director or writer post about it on Twitter a couple weeks ago. I'm like, I need to rewatch this movie. The amount of spinning kicks that he does in those blue jeans is mesmerizing. Because it's John Woo, so it's in slow motion, so you get to see the whole rotation of it. But the fact that anyone can kick that high in blue jeans is pretty impressive. And I'm going to say, hands down here, the greatest mullet ever put to film, counting TV shows or movies, is Jean-Claude Van Damme's in Hard Target. There's so much bounce to the mullet. It's curly. it's got a lot. It's almost like it has a life of its own, and because there's so many slow motion scenes in that movie, you get to see the mullet really do its work.
I was going to counter with Con Air, but Nicolas Cage is actually kind of rocking a skullet because he's getting real thin on top.
It's close to it. Yes, exactly. It's very close to the mullet, but his is somewhat more even around. This is like just perfect, like party in the back, man. That's all he meant. That's all they meant it to be. That's what they got. I didn't even realize it was produced by Sam Raimi. I watched it because I saw the opening credits, and I was like,
nice.
Oh, his brother shows up for a cameo appearance. But it was, so that's one thing I just watched. It's a 90s action movie. They're all the same. They all have slow motion. It's John Woo. It's got doves in it. So that's, something you're going to happen. You're going to have happen because it's the 90s. One thing I'll talk about, I don't always talk about things I don't like as much, but I think I'm going to start talking about things that are, and I don't ever like trashing anything, so I'm not going to trash it, but I watched The Grudge remake, reboot, whatever it's considered last night.
Yeah.
99-cent rental on Vudu. It wasn't good. It was great cast. John Cho, Andrea Riseborough. If you haven't you can look her up. She's done some good stuff. It's got Betty Gilpin from Glow, which is a show I know you and me both love.
I love her, and I can't believe Glow hasn't been brought up yet, but that's something we're definitely
Glow will definitely be brought up. We'll talk about it at the end because the new and final season is coming, I think, within the next 2 months or so.
Yep.
But it's one of those things like it's an hour and a half movie, but it takes place in 3 different years. So it starts in 2004, and then it goes to 2006, then back to 2004, then back to 2006, then it goes to 2005, and then back to 2006, all in 30 minutes. I was like, what is going on? I'm like, so it just, you lose a lot of the tension, I think. And, Rebecca, she fell asleep. It was a movie I put on for her, because honestly, I'm not a huge fan of the Grudge series anyway. I watched it because I liked the director's first movie, which was The Eyes of My Mother, which I thought was fantastic. It's a black and white 2016 horror film, just really visually stunning, great performances. And I was excited for this. Nicholas Pesky, I believe is how you say it. And I didn't do anything for me. It wasn't very scary. There were some cool visual effects. But when you meet the people and then it's like you have to wait 20 minutes to find out if they're dead or not because they're not. That's the thing with some of the characters, they're not in the current 2006 timeline. So basically it's like a mystery, what happened to them? And then we have to go back and then it does the whole final scare thing, and that always bugs me too. Especially because in this day and age, it's not guaranteed you're getting a sequel. So give me an ending in these horror films because I understand if it's something that you're planning on. Like, a good example would be the new Halloween movie, which you and I went and saw. Like, it has one of those endings where it could end. They're making 2 more. But it could have ended, and it gave you an ending. But now they want to, so it's one of those things, like, if you're going to do it, give me an end. Don't but it's not over. And it's like, well, it is over, because I'm never going to see it again.
Another one that comes to mind with that is I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Yes.
Those little pop-ups, like, oh, okay. What the hell? Type things.
That was one of those movies. Like I like it for its the way it is in slasher history. Like it sits in there. It came after Scream, but it's got some fun moments to it. But the fact that, and this is a spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen I Know What You Did Last Summer, which came out many, many years ago. The killer is someone you literally never see throughout the entire movie. They get to the end of the movie and you're like, it's this guy, and you're like, who? Where'd that guy come from? And it's the guy they hit with their car, but we never see him at all throughout the entire movie, and it was just kind of like, wait, what? And that does do a time jump thing in it too, doesn't it? I haven't seen it in a while, but I know it.
Yeah, when we get on this topic of time jumps, if it's not a love story and it's got a time jump in there, or we're talking about time travel or just anything like that, I need a good love story in there. That's just me in the romantic side.
So what you're saying is
you got the lake house with Keanu Reeves.
God.
And
I used to make fun of that movie so much for Rebecca because she loves the movie.
About Time, which is something I will talk about in detail because the 2013 movie About Time.
I haven't watched it yet. I hear it's really good. It's
good. It's one of those ones that sneaks up on you. time travel love stories. I think that's something we're going to have to do a show on because,
we should do a
we
Rachel
could even squeeze
McAdams.
Back to the Future into that because the whole Jennifer thing, it technically counts as a love.
Yeah, it's a love story you don't want to have happen though. And that's a Rachel McAdams thing. She's got 2 time travel love movies that she's in. Another thing I think this is something that you will like. I posted about it the other day. I think yesterday. All American, which is a show it's on CW, but the first 2 seasons are on Netflix right now. It's a football drama about an athlete who it's based off the true story of Spencer Pasinger. I don't really remember him, but he played in the NFL for like 5-6 years. So he starts living. It starts off he lives in Crenshaw in California, and then he gets this opportunity through his mom and the head coach at Beverly Hills High School to go, played by Taye Diggs, to go and play at a better school for his education purposes and for football in general. And so they kind of go back and forth. Like, he's getting in fights in Crenshaw, so they want to move him away from the anger and the hatred, because it's about a guy whose father abandons him. So there's a lot of that turmoil in it. It's a really good show. It's very emotional. I think it handles the difference between growing up privileged and growing up not privileged very well. Some of the things that they introduce to someone, because there are some characters who are black in the show who are rich, and then they kind of introduce those characters to what it's like to grow up in some place like Crenshaw in the show, which is not a nice area. Police pulling them over because they're black. It deals with a lot of current issues, which I think is really good to have a show that's mainly made for young kids to get along to watch. But I thought, sure, some of the acting's cheesy and some of the storylines are a bit cheesy now and then, but I thought altogether, it's a really good show. It definitely fits into today's current outlook on society and how everything's just kind of crumbling at the moment.
It's a thing. I can tell you to say about it.
So it's definitely, and now, when we come to recommending, I'm going to recommend some things that kind of fit into today's culture too. But this just so happens to be something I just happened to finish. I finished it, honestly, 2 seasons, 33 episodes in 2 days. I think 3 days maybe.
It's hot outside. You can't be walking around.
Right, it's really hot outside. I'm in my garage right now. It's pretty damn hot. But yeah, it's just one of those shows I think a lot of people, just people that like football shows, I think would enjoy it too, because there's a lot of good football stuff in it. But then there's a lot of good real life stuff in it too that help move it along. Taye Diggs is really good in it as the coach and he's a former NFL player. Another movie I watched just the other day, this is a documentary. It's called Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street. So it is a documentary about Mark Patton, who is the star of Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, which most Nightmare fans my age would say is probably the worst one, because it's such a departure from the original that it really doesn't have a place. But it's gained momentum in the last maybe 10, 15 years because, especially with conventions and stuff, because a lot of people consider it to be the first queer horror film, and where it deals with those things that queer people had to deal with back in the 80s and now still. I mean, we can only progress so far, right? We progress, and it seems like we take 10 steps back every day.
Indeed. It's just...
So it's become an important movie, I think, in the queer horror fan base. So it was interesting to see this documentary and have Mark Patton, the star of the movie, talk about how it kind of changed his life. He was on this weird trajectory. He was in a play with Cher, which then got turned into a movie with Robert Altman. So he's in this big movie with Cher. And then he's getting these roles and stuff. He was on some TV show. He's dating another male celebrity who he was from Little House on the Prairie, Timothy Murphy, I think. And they were in a relationship, and it was quiet because they were not out homosexuals back then. So then he gets this big movie in 1984 or 1986, I think. But let me look it up real quick. So he gets this big movie, and he thinks this is his next thing. But unfortunately, a lot of people saw. The director and writer claimed that they didn't see the gay undertones in the movie, the subtext, as they call it. But he his agents went to the movie with him and they watched it with him and they told him like, well, we're going to have to make you a character actor because you can't play straight. And it was after seeing that movie. So that like basically ruined his idea of wanting to be a movie star. And he basically packed it up, quit Hollywood. He ended up, the interesting thing about the documentary is what he survived. So he's become kind of like a cult. He's got cult status himself now because he's helped a lot of queer horror fans like come out, realize that when they saw him in that movie, they're like, that's me. That's who I am. But in the 90s, he had, at one time, he had TB, AIDS, and cancer all in one time. And he survived.
Wow.
He freaking survived, and he said the TB medicine required him not to take the cocktail for AIDS for a year. So he had to like risk that, and he still survived. And he's here to tell his story today. And it's a really great documentary just to kind of see how far he's come. And like in the last like 10 years, he's become like this convention. Like people want to meet him. They don't care about meeting some of the other people. They want to meet Mark Patton. And you're like, most people are like, who? Even I, as a horror fan, would be like, who? But he's just become like he's done now reunions with the cast, and he got to sit down in the movie. He gets to sit down with the writer and talk about the subtext that the writer denied when the movie came out because people were not very nice. Well, again, people still aren't very nice to homosexuals. But back in the 80s, when AIDS was at the high point, they wanted to deny all that stuff. So he put a lot of that on Mark Patton, and Mark Patton felt that, and that's why he kind of ran away from Hollywood. So it was interesting to see him talk with the writer about that. But it's an interesting story. I think even if you don't like horror films, if you just like movies, it's interesting to kind of see how it went. And they talked to Robert Englund, of course, and stuff. And it's just a really good documentary that I recommend. And it's on Shudder if you don't have Shudder. And you could also rent or buy it as well. So
I knew very little about this topic when you posted about it. And honestly, one of my favorite things to do is see what you've been watching and read your posts, and that's what got the idea. It's like, you know what, we should do a podcast where we can actually talk about this back and forth at length.
Yes, I do have to credit you with getting me to do this because it's something I've thought about doing for years, and I've never really done it, and here we are actually doing it. So
I am happy to be the Robin to your Batman, sir, because you are the human encyclopedia when it comes to these film topics and discussions. I consider myself a film guy, but going up against your knowledge is quite humbling, and I appreciate being able to share this time with you because I learn something new every day, or every time we talk about this. So I look forward to continuing to do these as often as possible, I hope that each and every one of you listening will share this with at least one person and get them listening too. And send us emails, contact us. We want to talk about everything you guys want to talk about, both good and bad. If we suck on something, or
if we're wrong, if you think we're wrong, let us know.
Like, I fudged a couple of dates when movies came out during our top 10.
We'll know. Us out on this. Yeah, we'll know we'll have people that are like me, because there will be people that will be commenting like, sir, that was actually 1989, so get your times correct. Which is stuff I do to people in public, to their faces. All right, so next we're going to talk a little bit about Hollywood. Obviously, Hollywood right now is shut down for the most part, especially in the United States with COVID on the rise again. They are starting overseas. They're starting to film, to start, I can't think of the word. They are starting to film again overseas. Resuming filming overseas. So some of the stories I want to talk about, one is, I think, big to you. Taika Waititi, the director of Thor, Ragnarok, and What We Do in the Shadows, has directed, I believe, 1 or 2 episodes of The Mandalorian. Has been tapped to start a new Star Wars franchise. I, for one, as a fan of him, am very excited. I'm interested, Wayne, to hear your opinion as more Star Wars diehard than I am, and what you think he might be able to bring to the Force.
Without knowing a whole bunch about what's going on and what the story's going to entail, I think right now, with as toxic as some of the Star Wars fan base is, I think everybody can agree that it's time for the Skywalker saga, or story, whatever you want to call it. Let's put it to bed. If you hated how it ended, sorry. If you loved how it ended, great. There are more Jedi in the universe than Luke Skywalker. And Rey Skywalker and just the characters. Let's move on.
Yeah.
There is an Old Republic that is a glorious, vast history of stuff. You got the video games in the early 2000s, Knights of the Old Republic, where there are hundreds of Jedi and hundreds of Sith, and the storylines that you could explore. It's like you've got this nutshell of a story. A story of a boy, a girl, and a galaxy. Let's explore that galaxy. I mean, I loved Luke Skywalker and his whole deal, and whether or not I loved how that story ended for him, I'm not going to get into that. I want something new. I want something fresh. Back in, I don't remember how long ago, George Lucas was exploring a show about the underworld. Like, the underworld of Coruscant, the dark, the seedy, the bounty hunter.
Kind of like a mob story, but of Star Wars, yeah.
Again, and I know that we have talked with folks about who wanted to definitely see that. I am definitely a fan of the Force and Jedi and Sith and all that stuff. I love lightsabers. But if it's got Star Wars attached to it, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
So I just want something new. And based on this gentleman's track record, I think he can deliver as long as the restraints are taken off.
And that's the
really,
big thing,
you don't know exactly, how much leeway and how much freedom he's going to have. As we know, the gentlemen that did Game of Thrones were dismissed from their trilogy. Who knows? I don't really know the ins and outs and whatnot, and I don't really want to get into that because I don't have enough information.
Yeah, right. It was one of those things that was big for a while, and then they just dropped out or got fired or whatever, and it went away.
With Disney, and another thing that just makes it's a head scratcher is when they fired the two directors of Solo, and they brought in, was it Ron Howard?
Ron Howard, yes. Ron Howard, a director who I love, but not great for action films usually.
But I enjoyed Solo.
You did. I know you did. You liked it.
On the line. But anyway, I'm excited to see something new.
Yes.
Completely new.
Well, and with someone like Taika, you're going to get something new and different, I think. And that was why, and hopefully they treat him how they treated him for Thor Ragnarok, because Thor the Dark World was such like a letdown, I think, to most Marvel fans, that the producers that time around were like, all right, you got a good idea, dude, just run with it. And you could tell they let him and Hemsworth just run with their ideas and what they wanted to do. And it worked so well for that movie. I'm not saying it's going to work for every movie, and I'm not saying it needs to be funny. I know people hate when something that was kind of dark like Star Wars and they add the humor to it and everyone freaks out. It's okay to have humor in life.
As long as the humor works and doesn't feel forced.
Of course.
Ragnarok nails it perfectly.
Yes, exactly. It was perfect for that movie. If he keeps that same kind of tone, I think it'll work for a Star Wars movie. Again, we don't know what it's going to be about, who's going to be in it. We don't know many things right now. It's just the fact that he's been signed on to direct it. He's confirmed it. And I'm excited just because I'm a fan of his.
Absolutely.
The next thing we have to talk about is someone who I think you and I have a lot of disdain for when it comes to his movies, and it's Zack Snyder. And the inevitable, and I guess it was bound to happen eventually, the Snyder Cut is coming to HBO Max early next year. He's released a teaser trailer for it. Darkseid's supposed to be a main character in it. They've given him more money to finish it, so he'll be able to do some of the things that he wasn't able to do. I know he did have to. Part of the reason he left the first movie was because his daughter unfortunately committed suicide, and that was something that he had to deal with. And obviously, we understand that. But taking that away and just talking about him as a director, like I like Dawn of the Dead, and I like Watchmen, and that's pretty much. Like the other movies I enjoy to a certain extent. I enjoyed parts of Man of Steel. Some of like the Wonder Woman scenes in Batman vs. Superman I thought were really good. Justice League, I wasn't as disappointed with Justice League as a lot of people were. I thought Whedon added some needed levity to it. I know people weren't happy. My biggest concern is like you have these Snyder fanboys who tore apart Batman vs. Superman, Man of Steel, and parts of Justice League, who are all of a sudden excited for him to get his own Snyder Cut out there. I just don't feel like there's enough Snyder supporters to warrant the Snyder Cut being lobbied by fans. I'm interested. I'm gonna watch it, obviously. I just don't. I'm not that excited about it, to be honest. Like, I thought Justice League was an okay movie the way it was made. I think in order to make it better, you kind of had to go rethink their entire plan from the beginning, which would,
See, part of the reason why if you recall, we saw this movie together.
We saw it in theaters, yes, we did.
And we didn't hate it, but I think we definitely agree that Henry Cavill's digitized mustache removal did not work.
It didn't work. It was weird, yeah.
And, for me, as a Superman fanboy, Superman is my favorite superhero of all time. I know he's the big blue Boy Scout, and he's one-dimensional, but I love him. I always have. Thor is a solid number 2. I have a thing for red capes. What can I say? I may or may not run around the house in one when no one else is around. Hey, leave that up to your imagination. But part of what a lot of the people that hated this movie, I don't know if it's because it's just, Affleck and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because they needed Superman to come save the day because Wonder Woman and Batman and Flash, and Aquaman, they couldn't do it without him. And I don't have a problem with that. I really liked Man of Steel. Is it a great movie? No, but some of my favorite parts of Man of Steel are the beginning where it takes place on Krypton.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Some of that stuff is great.
Yeah.
Kevin Costner's portrayal of Jonathan Kent, I think, was while Kevin Costner did a really nice job. I don't like how that
character was portrayed.
It's not who I know. It's not the Jonathan Kent that I know, and that's fine. It doesn't have to be. It took me by surprise and took me out of the movie because I started thinking, Jonathan Kent wouldn't say that. He wouldn't do that. So I think it's a lot of things that people didn't agree with. If you talk about the end of Man of Steel and the controversy there.
Yeah, it was odd, yeah.
Has it been long enough? Can we talk about that?
I think so. It's been many years, yeah.
They say that, Superman doesn't kill. Well, Superman had to kill to save a whole bunch of people, and they destroyed the city, but, anyway.
It's one of those things.
We're going off on a tangent here, so.
There's some things that I liked about that movie, some things I didn't. That stuff didn't bother me. The cities being destroyed didn't bother me, especially because they work it into Batman vs. Superman, which I think helps. Yes. Because the reason it doesn't bother me is no one talks about all the cities that the Marvel characters destroy, because their movies are fun, and they're witty, and we enjoyed them. But most of the times after a battle, the city they just fought in is destroyed, and it just never gets talked about again. Except for, I take that back, because they do bring it into Civil War a little bit and trying to get them under control. But for many movies, it went untalked about. So that doesn't bother me as much. And like I said, the fact that they addressed it, I think, helped. I get what people say, Superman would take him away from the city so that people would care. But the point is that he was learning to become Superman, right?
Right.
So that was... Like, he wasn't like in the original movies, he was automatically this blue Boy Scout that we all knew him to be, just like he was in the comics. This one, I don't fault Snyder for that, wanting to take kind of a different approach to it, trying to get, he killed Zod, so that's why he doesn't kill anymore. There was a reason. There wasn't just I don't kill people. It was well, I had to kill this guy for that reason, and now I don't want to do it anymore. That's
exactly.
Cool. But, I mean, the whole DC... EU or whatever the heck it's called anymore. I think they're just better off doing one-offs. Stop trying to tie things together. I'm sure Wonder Woman...
Or do better at tying it together.
Well, at this point, they'll probably have to restart the whole franchise if they want to do that, because they've just peppered it with so many mistakes. Yeah. I mean, Wonder Woman was great. I love Wonder Woman. Yeah. I really liked Aquaman. I know people are 50-50 on that one. Yeah. Shazam, I thought was really good, really entertaining.
I recently saw Shazam, and I really enjoyed it.
It was a lot of fun.
I can get behind this.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the Snyder Cut, we'll see. I'll watch it. I don't know if you will, but I'll watch it. And
I'll watch it just to see what's new and what's different and whatnot, but I'm not, waiting to be blown away.
I know. I was never on board with the whole Snyder Cut thing, but we'll see. I'm glad that he does get to finish his story, I guess. That's what people were probably more excited about than anything. All right, so let's talk about, we did lose Ian Holm and Fred Willard and Joel Schumacher in the Hollywood industry lately. Three guys that I've been fans of. For Joel Schumacher directed one of my favorite horror films in The Lost Boys. So rest in peace, Joel.
Yes.
It's a loss. I understand he was sick, I believe. Fred Willard.
Long battle with cancer.
Yeah, Fred Willard is another comedic actor who I think you and I both have loved for a long time. He's very funny. Some people may not even know who he is because he's that guy. But I think
he's the funny guy in this movie. Yeah,
right, exactly. He's the announcer in Best in Show. He's the funny guy in this scene here, and a lot of times it's down to like one scene. Like he has one main scene and that's it. But he was great. He'll be missed.
Yes.
And Ian Holm, of course, Lord of the Rings, Aliens. I mean, he was kind of like a big box office star that wasn't really a big box office star. No one was clamoring to get Ian Holm in like their next big budget movie, but whenever he showed up, it was worth having because he was a phenomenal actor. He was great as Bilbo. I never saw the Hobbit movie, so I don't know if he was in those too, wasn't he? Or was he not in the Hobbit ones?
I believe he makes a cameo just like Frodo does.
Okay. Okay.
Of course, forgive me, I've forgotten the actor's name who plays Frodo.
Elijah Wood.
Elijah Wood, shame on me. Sorry, Elijah.
How dare you forget Elijah Wood? Yeah.
I hope you're not too distracted.
He's listening.
Come on the show and we'll talk.
We'll talk about it, yes. Elijah, that's a standing invitation if you want to come on our podcast. All right, we're on to the recommend portion of the show. We're going to recommend stuff that we think you listeners should watch. I've got a couple. I'll go first if you don't mind, Wayne.
Please do.
One's an old movie from, let me just look up, it's like the early 2000s. It's called May, and it's a horror film, and it's directed by Lucky McKee, and he is amazing, and people should see it because it's a great movie, and it's a female-led horror film, which you don't always, get, and even in the slasher franchise, the females are the stars. It's usually the killer that gets the, top billing. So it's something I recommend. It's a movie I've always loved. I haven't seen it in a while, and I'm not. The thing with something like May is it's been out since 2002, so 18 years. I don't know if it's playing on anything right now. Maybe you could find it on Tubi for free. I'm just going to say Google it if you want to see it. It stars Angela Bettis. She is a loner who is sad and depressed and has no friends, and starts murdering people and then making herself a friend.
With the pieces?
Out of their body parts, yes.
Nice! It's got a Frankenstein vibe to it.
It does. It does have a Frankenstein vibe to it. And it has a very eerie ending, which I won't spoil because I'm recommending people watch it. But it's a great movie.
It turns out that she realized that she is the monster.
No, I don't. She's too crazy to come up with that realization. But it's Lucky McKee is one of his first. It might even be his first movie, but it kind of in 2002 he kind of burst onto the scene with it, and I think it's one that he'll always be known for in the horror. Yes, it's his first feature-length actual movie, but it's just such a good movie if you like eerie horror films. Another one I have that I want to recommend is newer, and you can watch on Shudder or rent or buy it. It's called Bliss. It's directed by Joe Bagos, and it is written by its star, who was on Chicago Fire. Yeah, Chicago Fire. The actress's name is Dora Madison. She wrote it, and she stars in it as Desi. It's a female-driven vampire movie about an artist who gets bit by a vampire one night, and basically how she deals with the thirst and how she handles that. But she needs it. She needs the blood because she's a much better artist on the blood. So I don't want to give anything away. It's a somewhat newer movie. It is available on Shudder, and like I said, you could rent or buy it today. I own a copy of it. It is great. It's one of my favorite movies of 2019. I definitely recommend it highly. And a couple other things I'll recommend just with everything going on right now in this crazy world. There are some good older Spike Lee movies that I think are relevant to today. Do the Right Thing is something I think.
Let me stop you right there. If you have any inkling of something that you need to get a grasp of, or just if this has affected you, Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, is that what, 89?
Yes, 1980, I believe 1989. Yeah.
Fantastic portrayal of just things that I want to describe this in the most proper way, and I don't want to belittle it or make light of it in any way, but when shit gets real, real fast. It's pretty accurate about what today's going on.
Exactly.
21 years since the film has been made, and in a sense, it kind of makes me really sad that we haven't improved or moved forward. In the sense, we've almost kind of taken a step backward.
Yes.
And so I'm sorry not to interrupt, but
yes, no, totally. It's totally a movie that fits in with the George Floyd discussion today, because similar, like in today, something like that happens in Do the Right Thing with Radio Raheem, a character in the movie, and people get angry and they get upset, and that you feel the raw emotion from that scene and from what happens. Other movies I'd like to talk about that he's done as well. One of his most recent ones, Black Klansman, was nominated for a bunch of Oscars a couple years ago. He won one for it. It's a great movie. John David Washington, Denzel's kid, is in it. He's fantastic. Adam Driver's in it. He's great too. It's about a cop who goes undercover on the phone in the KKK as an African American cop. It's a true story. It's done really well. It handles the topic of racism very well and kind of makes you see what it is today. And that's the other thing too with Spike Lee's movies. I haven't watched his new one yet, The Five Bloods, which will come up in a minute here. But he has a way of making movies that are about 30, 40 years ago relevant to today. And I know a lot of people don't like him because he's very brash, I guess, with his opinions. And I think us Bulls fans over the years have just, he's waned on us because he's a Knicks fan and we're Bulls fans. And he's always been.
Yeah, but we saw how that ended for him.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You know what? I'm going to let you finish, but
okay.
I just need to say this really quick. I apologize. I just went Kanye on you. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm going to let you finish, but The Last Dance. Since I don't have cable anymore, I cannot watch it because you need to have a cable provider, and I want to see it, and I can't. But you brought up the Bulls, and that just sparked it in mind. And I'm like,
okay. Well, get ready to be excited because this will be the recommendation portion. If you haven't watched The Last Dance, watch it. It's coming to Netflix next month.
Outstanding.
So, yes, it's one of the top things added next month. It was Netflix everywhere else. It was just ESPN in the United States. Yep. So I assumed at some point it would hit Netflix, and I believe I saw the posting, and The Last Dance was on there for this month. So if you haven't seen Last Dance, wait for it. It's coming out. It's fantastic. It's phenomenal. I can't wait for you to watch it. We will do a talk on that because it is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
One more I'm going to recommend is a movie that deals with race as well from 2018, I believe. It's called Blind Spotting. It stars Daveed Diggs from his most famous for being one of the stars of the soon-to-be-released movie, Hamilton. He's one of the main characters in Hamilton, but he wrote with his buddy Rafael Casal Blind Spotting, which is a movie about a man who just gets out of jail and witnesses a cop shoot a black man, an unarmed black man. And basically it goes through how he has to deal with this in his everyday life as being a witness of something like this and how it could happen to him. And it's got such a powerful ending. It's so good. I feel like it's one that people missed. In my opinion, it came out the same year as Black Klansman. It should have been nominated, I think, for almost as many Oscars as Black Klansman, which was one of my favorite movies that year, too. I believe it's on something right now. Whether it's Amazon Prime, HBO. I think it's on HBO right now. So if you have HBO, go check Blind Spotting. I think Black Klansman's up there as well. Do the Right Thing. You can rent or buy. Bliss, rent or buy or watch on Shudder, and May, rent or buy.
So everything that I'm going to recommend now is currently on Amazon Prime Video.
Okay.
I'm going to start with, I believe it's 1985's Clue.
Love Clue.
Fantastic movie.
Fun story. We watched Clue while we played Clue recently.
There you go. Tim Curry, what can you say, is amazing as always. Whether he's in full clown makeup or not. Yeah. Get the reference?
I get it.
Tune in next week and we'll explain that to you. Another one, Running Scared. Billy Crystal.
Billy Crystal, yep.
1987, I want to say.
Something along those lines, yeah. I've only seen it once or twice, but it's a good movie.
They did a remake or a movie with the same name. I'm not exactly sure, but it's a cop thriller, gritty.
Not a remake. Running Scared, the Paul Walker one. The one you're talking about is 1986. The Paul Walker one, I believe, is based off a graphic novel.
Gotcha.
Which is also really well done. And when people say Running Scared, I think of that one first. But the Billy Crystal, Gregory Hines movie is also very good and very funny.
To fill my quota for organized crime movies, you have Rush Hour and Donnie Brasco available on Amazon Prime Video.
Nice.
And obviously we have Spaceballs.
May the Schwartz be with you, sir.
I see your Schwartz is as big as mine. Well done. And let's see, you got Talladega Nights on there. Don't Mess with the Zohan. Nacho Libre, one of my favorites. If you know me, we did a lot of overtime in our previous employer. I made the guys watch it ad nauseum. Fantastic. Happy that it's on there. Give it a watch. Ooh, Lord of the Rings is on there too. So a lot of good stuff.
A lot of good stuff. And if you don't have Amazon Prime, it's got a lot of good stuff. They're always adding.
That's the one thing that I think Disney Plus. It made all these other streaming platforms up their game with what their content is.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, we'll have one or two interesting things, and then with Disney Plus and their just wide variety of stuff, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, they all needed to step it up because they were going to get dominated. Or that was at least the fear.
That was the fear, yeah. Disney, I think, needs to step up their game a little bit too. But I know they have a lot of movies that they're waiting for because they have contracts with other companies. And they have to wait for them, some of them 2 years to put them up on their service. But
that's just my little. And as I'm scrolling through on Prime Video here, there is a ton of stuff. So
there is a lot, yes.
Yeah, I know it sucks to stay home, and if you're an extrovert and you want to be out around people, it sucks. But right now is a renaissance for online movie and TV watching. So.
Hold on.
You have options. You can keep yourself occupied. Trust me.
So, what I plan on watching next, Spike Lee's The Five Bloods, which is on Netflix. I really want to see King of Staten Island with Pete Davidson, directed by Judd Apatow.
Yes.
TV-wise, I'm looking forward to starting back up Better Call Saul. I don't know when I'm going to get to that, but hopefully, I know the most current season. I don't know. I think it's done. Yeah, it's done. Obviously, it's done.
Right.
We're in June, almost in July.
Halfway through 2020, this nightmare's almost over.
Yeah. The sad part for me is that they've stopped making a lot of movies, so stuff's not getting released as much. So there aren't as many movies as I'd like to see, like newer ones. But yeah, there are definitely some. And a lot of times with me, when it comes to I'm waiting for Umbrella Academy season 2 end of July. Yep. Waiting for Glow sometime this year, the final season. Lucifer season 5 we talked about earlier. So those are some of the things I'm looking forward to.
I kind of already talked about everything that I'm excited about. Lucifer's coming out in August. Currently watching the first season of Umbrella Academy, finishing up Sopranos. I just really want to talk about how much I miss going to the theater.
Yes.
And, the popcorn and the drinks and all, you pay a fortune for it, but there's something about the ambiance of sitting in the theater and just the excitement and the anticipation of it that I really, really miss.
Yeah, you know me. I miss it a lot. But at the same time, I understand why we're not back yet. So
Absolutely.
Let's everybody keep doing their part, and we'll be back soon, hopefully. I know they pushed the movies back again. Bill and Ted got pushed back 2 weeks, you jerks. It's all your guys' fault for not...
I don't care what anybody says. It's going to be great, and I'm going to watch it. I'm going to buy it at least twice.
Oh, yeah. I can't.
The reason I bring up the movie theater thing is because that is an industry that is suffering, and a lot of theaters are closing.
Yes, they are.
And I know that it's better to be safe than sorry, and it's just when we are able to finally go back and watch movies and in the comfort of I was going to say the comfort of your own home.
Comfort of an air-conditioned theater that smells like popcorn and nachos.
Yeah, it's just something about the infectiousness of another person's laugh.
Yeah,
that will make it funnier to you. And I just cannot wait until we can all be together again.
Yeah,
and watch.
I'm excited. I'm excited for the movies to come back. That's for sure. Well, everybody, thank you for listening to our first episode of Now Showing with Mike and Wayne. We'll post this soon, and then we'll do another one hopefully real soon. We want to keep it going as much as we can. Hopefully you guys like it. I'm Michael Kirkpatrick with...
I am Wayne Yerke, the sidekick, and I love it.
And again, thanks for listening. All right, everybody.
Peace. Take care. Thank you for listening.